Folks, thanks for being here. We'll go ahead and get started. And to keep this simple, you have all of our information already. You have the idea about what the panel's about. You know who the speakers are. So we'll skip that part of the session where we talk about ourselves, but we'll jump right into it and remind you that you're in track A6 or the global track and the culture and ecosystem for this. So what I'll do to make this easy is I'm going to pass it on to Subbu and Dr. Lopez to first talk about unlimited mentoring. In fact, they'll also go through an overview of the three elements that we're going to cover in this talk. And in between, we'll also allow for Q&A if you'd like to. Otherwise, we could save the Q&A section till the end. But thanks for being here. Dr. Lopez, I'll just stick it over to you. And
that, we will cover mentoring as the first section, what we've been doing in that regard. After that, inclusive ecosystem, Shinu, who's here from Rajasthan, India, will cover what they've been doing and their explanations and so on. And then building entrepreneurial culture will be done by a combination of Dr. Black and Ravi from Houston, discussion in between. Fair enough? That's sort of where we're going, and stay along with us or guide us along to where we go to the right places together. With that in mind, here's the one slider about who is TiE. TiE got started 32 years ago and is still headquartered in Silicon Valley. It's the world's largest nonprofit society for entrepreneurs. 15,000 members in 6 cities in a dozen plus countries. Okay? The bulk of the chapters are in North America and in India. In North America, we have about 22 chapters. In India, there's about 24 chapters. And then all the rest of the chapters are everywhere in between, from Australia, et cetera. What we do is foster entrepreneurship. And when people say, what does that mean? It's a very simple mission statement. We do it through what we call the 5 pillars that you see on the right side in terms of mentoring, educating, networking. Best networking group I know. So hopefully you might start to, after today, network with us. And we have 15,000 members totally. Okay? That's sort of about who we are, what we do, etc. We started a program called TiE University in Atlanta 10 years ago, in Hyderabad, India, about 6 or 7 years ago, 8 years ago. I've now gone global since 2019. I'm going to tell you some of the things we've learned that you might apply. Fair enough? Awesome. We're also one of the largest angel groups in the country. We invest in early stage tech startups primarily. Okay? So with that, I'm going to ask Subbu, who's just passing on the baton as the global co-lead with the TiE University program. Yours truly was the founder of the program many, many years ago out of Atlanta, but he's going to sort of share a little bit more about the very specific program we call TiE University.
Thanks, Paul, and thank you each one of you for sitting here. Let me start with this Oriental saying, right? So we all collectively follow, where the vision is 1 year, cultivate flowers, where the vision is 10 years, cultivate trees, where the vision is eternity, cultivate people. Probably, I think, entrepreneurial aspect is also part of cultivating people. We are taking that extension to work on further with TiE University. And we at TiE collectively believe that the ecosystem is very, very needed and meaningful, which will encourage students to be thinking about entrepreneurship, not just start businesses, but also the skills of entrepreneurship probably might give better careers for them as individuals as well. That's how we looked at it. The ecosystem includes multiple factors, students as the center, and mentors, the investors, the coaches, the influencers, everyone comes around. How do we make sure that this is a possibility as an extension, as a logical extension to the universities, working along with the universities to make sure that the students can become entrepreneurs, can become successful entrepreneurs along the way, right? So how do we work, right? So TiE, as Paul mentioned a while before, we have about 60 plus chapters across the globe. Cities represents chapters. All these chapters work with the colleges / universities, being students as the center point for us, right? So that is the ecosystem. So the pyramid is something like this. The students from universities and universities work with the local chapters. The chapters will work with the global ecosystem that we are creating. So how are we doing this, right? We are allowing students to start working with the business problem so that they understand how they can attempt to create business use cases through hackathons and hackathons, whatever we do. And then we collectively logically extend it towards creating competitions around business ideas, idea validations, business plan competitions, and which will be mentored by all our 3,000 plus charter members who are all entrepreneurs by themselves. So this is more like why entrepreneurs for entrepreneurs kind of a possibility. That mentoring happens through a program called Nurture, and then we extend it towards the angel networks, individual sub-charter members, as well as angel networks in the TiE will look at the possibilities of investing so that that gets continued further, not just speaking, right? We go through all these 9 different benefits for the students and the universities who are becoming part of ecosystem, which is centered by the mentoring. Like we have been looking at multiple panels since morning, the mentoring is one aspect that has been discussed a lot, and which is also an influential and an essential part of the overall ecosystem. So the center of mentoring, we look at it as unlimited mentoring for the aspiring entrepreneurs, as well as getting logically connected with different ecosystems, right? So being US, being India, and all other countries from Europe. How do we do that? We will continue to do. And Paul will continue to talk about what is the deeper sense of unlimited mentoring, which is essential, followed by Shinu, who will talk about inclusivity, how it is created from the other geographical location, India. And then Ravi and Ken will talk about how the students who are part of it last couple of years are thinking about it, what are the influential factors around it. And then we'll get on to the further discussion. Thank you.
Okay, so question time, and this is the calisthenics part of the program, so you get to put your hands up or down or whatever. How many of you have unlimited resources at your institution? And therefore you wake up in the morning going, wow, today I get to do nothing, everybody's going to be my partner. How many of you? So far, nobody, or else the arm is very heavy today, right? Well, guess what? You actually today can almost say that in as much as TiE is a give back society. We do this, and I can tell you certainly from our Atlanta chapter, every chapter gets to decide on a basis of what's right for their ecosystem, whether to charge. I have never sent a bill ever to a university for all we do across the state of Georgia, and I suspect that's probably true for the most part, no matter how much work and so on. So think of this as being your unlimited resource that is on payroll, but the payroll equals 0. Isn't that pretty good so far? The other part is we augment whatever you do at the colleges, because of the colleges, very likely you don't have enough resources who are current entrepreneurs. So we're going to provide to you faculty, students, administrators, these people who are real-time entrepreneurs. And let me tell you how it's been going. Okay. We've been growing across our footprint. We're now working with thousands of students across the world. You can see the growth we've had. Okay, we touch about 24 countries, North America, and most people. Who's not here from either? Who's here from US? Let's get a roll call. Okay. Who's here from Canada? We've got a couple of people. Okay. Who's here from India? Awesome. And who have I not counted? Okay. So your flag's up here so far, right? And you can see our growth and so just come be part of our family is what I tell you. We'll give you some contact info at the end. Just come be part of this ecosystem that we're building. And guess what? Like I said, it's the wonderful, magical 4-letter word of free, right? Free to you for utilizing the help. So I'm going to cover 3 things: why mentoring, how we do it. Number 1, show you a case study that we've run for the entire spring. So this is year 10. I'm just going to show you data about unlimited mentoring and why it matters to the students. And then end it by making it easy for you with the so what's in terms of the 3 things. If I was sitting in your shoes, what you might take away. Fair enough? That's what we're going to do for about 10 minutes. Okay. Why mentoring? Why mentoring? Who here uses mentors more than, an average amount? Anybody here use mentors from the community? I heard from north of LA is what I recall, right? And who there? Okay. So folks there from Massachusetts and from India. So for the rest of you, let me tell you what the students tell us. For the last 10 years, when we ask them what's our differentiator that made our programs so valuable to them, you know what they answer? Consistently, it has never changed. The real world entrepreneurial mentorship that they get, that they can call on in an unlimited fashion. We tell them an hour a week. We're going to show you some numbers that will blow your socks off. In the spring semester, we logged with 30 teams, 181 mentoring sessions. Logged, okay? So we've got data, and I'll show you the amount of the quality of that mentoring as well. How do we do it? Very simple. Inclusivity comes about. Let me ask you this. How many of you work in a youth sports kind of environment? Anybody? Okay. When those students arrive, you tell them, picking you, but you're not being picked. You can't be part of the league. That's not true, right? But you know, we do that in entrepreneurship. We tell people, you belong, we're giving you a mentor. You don't belong, we're not giving you a mentor. Why would we do that? So one of the things we've learned in inclusivity is, let's give everybody a mentor. Let them self-select out in terms of showing up at practice sessions, going through competitions, showing up at games, etc. And that's the sort of the background to the why and the how. Every single team. This year we had 44 teams apply across the state of Georgia. Every single one got a dedicated mentor who's a real world entrepreneur. Okay? It turned out 14 self-selected out, actually. We got to 34 that used their mentors. The other 10 said, I'm not ready, which is fine, come back next year. 4 of them said, I'm ready a little bit, and the 30 is the set of numbers I'm going to show you. So let's look at how it worked. So they apply during Q4. In January, we say, here's your mentor. You're going to work with that person through April. Okay. The top winning ones, we've learned a good trick, give them more than one mentor. You know, God gave us 2 parents for a reason. We think giving people 2 mentors is also a valuable thing. There's a takeaway that if you have the right set of resources, consider doing it. We've put this almost like a curriculum together because I think many times we run programs with student teams, unlike sports teams, where it's sort of a show up and we'll see what happens and we'll serve you pizza. That is not how to run a program. It's got to have a set of dates. This set of dates is set in October every year, much like you would do in any credit program that you would offer. The dates never change. This October, we will have next year's dates. And then if everybody shows up through the mock round, they will in turn become annual members of TiE Atlanta. This is a case study. Every chapter does it a little differently. And they can come to all our events, of which we do probably 3 to 4 a month as scholarship membership, okay? In turn, then we continue a global program. We're going to keep the case study to why unlimited mentoring during this semester and how did we do, okay? The math, we have students just like yours. If you've got students that are undergrads, grads, PhD students, whatever, we treat them as if they are now going to be entrepreneurs, and we keep the program going for 2 years after they graduate, because they're not going to become entrepreneurs the moment they graduate, okay? So there's a lot of math in here. The other part I would tell you, remember how sports does a lot of stuff that keeps track of averages of math and so on? We do exactly the same. I think in general, our entrepreneurship centers don't do enough of that. So one thing I tell you is become more systematic, more intentional about what you do. And so in that regard, every time they do a session, which on average lasts for 56 minutes, I know that number to be true, okay? For the last 181 sessions, 56 minutes, we tell them when you're done, take 2 extra minutes, so now becomes 58 minutes. They fill out a Google form, and the Google form ends up with this kind of math. These are actual statistics. I am telling you, be more intentional when you pull on people to do mentoring. 181 sessions with 30 teams. You see the math on the right, 10,000 minutes logged. If it's not logged, we say it didn't happen. It's like saying I showed up at practice, but I didn't play. Well, then you didn't show up at practice, right? Okay, in that regard, the part I am particularly proud of is we asked the mentee in that 2-minute log filling, how did you feel about it? I'm going to tell you, our numbers are stellar. Okay? They get a scale of 1 to 10, and we say, how was the session and its value? You tell me any program, any institution is running that has a 9.2 average. And we don't think that's still good enough. And we call on any session that is a 6 or below score, of which there were 4, one of them including the mentor who said, my mentee didn't show up, right? So let's find out what happened. Are you going to continue, et cetera? And then this set of math and statistics are contained. Okay? The next 3 slides or 4 slides I'm going to show you is we believe there's a correlation between the amount of mentoring that happens. You saw the quality of the mentoring and how they do in the program as they progress. So we have 3 rounds, a mock round, a semifinal that we call a qualifying round, and a finals, just Atlanta data. We want to have, if people get mentored a lot, we want them to be ranked, right, at the lower part. So we want as many dots on the upper right as we can, very low above the line. There's not 100% correlation. These are the actual scores when judges who were VCs and entrepreneurs judged these teams, et cetera, gave them written feedback. They get feedback within the hour after the program's done, because it's all done through G Suite kind of deal. So you see what happened in the mock round. They all get markedly better. Here is what happened in the semifinals for those same 30 plus teams. All the stuff is to the lower part of the line that says the more they mentor, there's a team that finished first. By the way, they finished at the top of our competition. They had 17 sessions from January to March. They can have as many sessions as they want. By the time of the finals, they had 22 sessions. That team is still meeting. We have teams that have met for 2, 3, 4 years. These mentors like the team so much, they continue to do it. So what I'm telling you is this math says 2 or 3 things. We put all the data together, and you can see there's a correlation between how they do and the number of mentoring sessions they have. So the ranking on the x-axis, how many mentoring sessions they had. There are people all cheering because we just give everybody a mentor. This is like Oprah. You get a mentor, you get a mentor, you get a mentor, right? Kind of deal. But that's important. I think otherwise we do not apply some of the things we've learned in sports. So I'm going to give you 3 takeaways, and then I'm going to tell you what we're going to study next. And then if you guys want help from TiE to be mentors, we can do it hybrid, Zoom, whatever works, et cetera. Be very sure about what your mission is. We have a simple mission to empower students to become entrepreneurs. And then the non-written mission is to let the students find out if they're not ready to be entrepreneurs now. So they will go through this and they go, it's not for me now, I'm going to go work for Deloitte, right? And so in inclusivity in this example is everybody gets a mentor. Okay? By the time they get through the semifinals, we double up the mentors. The second part is whatever you do, have a disciplined way, a systematic way of how you mentor. We say it's an hour a week, is what we say. Some people use a whole lot more, those that don't. And then measure both quantity and quality. Those are the 3 takeaways. What we're working on next is we're now working on not just pitch competitions, prizes, but investability. Tomorrow, we will kick off a workshop to invite mentors to be better mentors. We tend to only think of, in other words, in sports, you coach the coaches. Why not do that in mentoring as well? We're going to measure outcomes where the mentor can write up 2 minutes of feedback as well. Okay? We're going to continue to measure quality and quantity, and we're going to have assessments with how they're doing towards investability. I'm on a call with a student out of Georgia Tech that we invested $227,000 into his biotech product that runs at Emory University and a lot of other places for his next round. We ought to continue to find ways to do that. And then share the data. Nudging says for those that don't show up at practice or don't show up at mentoring, or to send them a note every single time when we fill a spot. Yeah. So with that said, take a picture of who we are. You'll get this again. Anybody that needs in North America, in India, I know you already know who I am. My contact info here will help you find folks that can help you in one of our chapters locally. And with that said, let's tell you about the next part of ecosystem building.
And the best moderator is the one that has the least amount of time from talking, so I'm just going to pass it over. And let's not do Q&A at this point. We'll just jump right into Dr. Sheenu Jawars,
Thank you.
part of the presentation.
So anybody can tell me where TiE University is based out of? Which state in the US? Which country in the world? It's TiE University.
It's Atlanta.
Sorry?
It's Atlanta.
Thank you.
Well, he did very well for Atlanta. He did very bad for TiE.
I said the case study was
Yeah.
So I would have you all know, TiE University is not a physical entity. So TiE Global basically gives back. All the people associated with TiE that Paul referred to, but he very, very cleverly, he shifted everything to Atlanta. But all of us from all the various parts of the world, we belong to TiE, and we have a commitment to give back voluntarily. But because TiE Global said that we want to work specifically with universities, because we want to work with their students, because that is where the whole bedrock of innovation and creativity for the future lies. So let's call this vertical as TiE Universities. It's in ether, it's in the cloud somewhere for every university of the world. So well, we're all gathered here today as part of the entrepreneurial ecosystem to learn how to facilitate innovation and entrepreneurship in higher education. So what is an ecosystem? I love to say an ecosystem is to the development of the mind as infrastructure is to the development of nations. So what really is that? And we have some very interesting definitions, but I can't read them from here. Okay. So we have Iceberg and we have Moon, we have Scanner, and they have evolved over a period of time, but the one which and I'm going to say for the rest of my panel, loves the most, is the one given by the World Economic Forum as far back as in 2013, particularly because, and all of you will love this, as one of the factors here, one of the most important fundamental pillars of the entrepreneurial ecosystems are the universities. So I'm not going to go with the word major, but basically with universities, because that's where our future really lies. So, how do we build this ecosystem inclusively? And before we go to inclusion, let's have a look at what diversity is, because diversity, as we all know, is the mix of various parameters. And it's like putting all the ingredients on the table, that's diversity, but having a lovely baked cake out of that, that is inclusion. How do the various ingredients really interact with each other to make the various aspects of diversity really work and come together as a wholesome whole? So some of the aspects of diversity as we know it are ethnicity, sexual orientation, gender identity, physical ability, religion, age, marital status, socioeconomic status, national origin. But anybody wants to volunteer to say if this is really an exhaustive list? Anybody wants to add more? This is a conventional list. Yes.
One thing we've been focusing on in our fellowship program is diversity of thought. So making sure that
Brilliant.
a lot of different majors and voices and interests are being included in our fellowship program.
That's
So
wonderful.
not having all engineers, but like engineers plus sociologists plus religious studies.
You just hijacked my next point. No, that's absolutely spot on. Anybody else?
We are divergent in terms of the ways that we learn, process, development.
Yes. So, absolutely. And I had put up a poll, and out of the 11 responses which I received when I asked if technology is fundamental to creating a startup, all students of technology, and out of the 11 responses that I received, only 4 people said yes. So clearly, technology could be the bedrock. It is what differentiates between a regular business and this potential scale that a business could get because it's in the ether. So it's catering to a lot more population. So the growth is, humongous. But really, that is not the only way to have a startup. That is not the only way. So there's so many parameters of diversity that make this thing work. So one thing, of course, that you said is the type of education. And one of the responses, amazing responses I got as well, was hybrid teams with the tech and non-tech background are one of the most effective. And was that you, Paul, that wrote this? So I
Staying in the
think you did.
house. Yeah.
Another very important thing that we've noticed, like Paul said, that all of us chapters are working with universities. So what is it that we do? We are not compensating for what the university does. So every university has a certain kind of education knowledge and focus that it gives to its students. And universities have a certain e-cell, that's entrepreneurship cell, or in India, it's the AIC, which is the Atal Incubation Center, which is funded by the government. And similarly, different countries have different, funding agencies or focus or mandates where you work with the entrepreneurs to create entrepreneurs, with the university students. So what we do is we have MOUs with these universities, we work with these students. And the most amazing part is sometimes students from different universities, different types of education, different types of thought process, they come together and they work on startup ideas. And that is absolutely brilliant. As we all know, if you have to develop a product, design thinking has become a very, very important part of putting it to execution to making it customer friendly. Design thinking was never thought of as one of the aspects of working on with students who are working with technology or a product. And I think the mobile is a perfect example because it does not get slotted into any particular category. It's not really a compensation for communication, but it's so many more things. And that's exactly how we have to look at when we think of successful entrepreneurship and innovation. Another thing which I found very interesting is with my experience of TiE University is personal experiences. So, when we work with entrepreneurs, we work with students, we're trying to make entrepreneurs out of them. But sometimes we actually listen to their personal experiences, which leads to innovation from a particular person, from a particular group of people, from a particular tier city, where they feel an on-ground gap. And that's how the solution comes forward. So, for example, there's a very interesting story about a person whose cousin could not see. And because he could not see, he did not have access to the education material beyond a very generic educational material that was available in the market. So he went on to produce digital braille so that any educational material could be downloaded and studied so that the students could be facilitated in their education, professional education going forward. So I think these personal experiences are very, very important to really understand what is going to work and how innovation can be facilitated. Do I have a couple of minutes? So this is a model, and again, I can't see it, but basically this I have picked up from this is the Office of Economic Cooperation and Development, which gives a great model of approaches to inclusive entrepreneurship. And when we look at this, which is a framework, and when we look at the TiE University framework, we find there are a lot of commonalities. And in fact, the TiE framework covers almost everything. So I'm going to let this stand there. And this is the slide I'm going to talk about, but I'll go back and I'll let this stand there. So in the TiE framework, we're looking at 4 things. One is students, one is mentoring, one is investors, and one is global education. With students, if you look at the third part, which is ensuring on this model, ensuring appropriate design and delivery mechanism in dedicated and general programs, we have a brilliant outreach. We're connecting with all the universities all over the world. There are multiple universities, multiple regions, gender. There's a liberal arts approach, like what you said, different kinds of education that comes together. There's great content because we're all learning from the past. We're building content. We're collaborating with each other. There is an SOP-driven delivery method, which Paul has spoken about. And really, really important, we have something which is called the Jupiter Project, which evaluates, which is like an evaluation tool for policy development of how should we deliver the mentoring going forward, what have we learned from the past. Then we have the second portion, which is delivering tailored support through dedicated programs. So we have mentoring, which again, Paul has spoken about. We have coaching, we have incubators and accelerators from the business community. We have the second part again covered in terms of access to finance, social capital and culture, and regulations, because we end up advising the government on the regulatory mechanisms to support the entrepreneurial ecosystem. We also have the first part covered in knowledge creation and diffusion, in helping the entrepreneurial capabilities, the culture setting, where of course, because it's multi-country, multi-tier city, multi-university, there's a lot of culture which is getting built together, which is very important because when you work on innovation and entrepreneurship, you're not just catering to a particular community, but you're basically trying to cater to the world, and you're trying to create a very, very wide-term impact. So having that cultural fabric, which is, again, a diversity mix, inclusion mix, is very, very important. Lastly, we work on online hackathons, which is really an amazing concept because you have students from a country like Germany partnering with students from India, US, China, Japan, and they're working on a particular problem, they're trying to find solutions. That in itself is absolutely amazing inclusivity, all by natural design. So this brings me captured. I took it to really on the policy documents for real change because there's no real full stop to it. It just must happen continuously all the time. And global entrepreneurship is successful when local adaptation is kept in mind. And that to me is true inclusivity. Thank you.
So we can, if you have a question, do you have a question? Go ahead. We'll take.
So I think several speakers mentioned ecosystem, how important it is. Now, if you look at the local governments and state governments, like entrepreneurship, does not belong in the Department of Health. It doesn't belong in the Department of Energy. So that's at the federal level. So when you go and try and say, hey, Phoenix has nothing, which is not true. Phoenix has a law, and so Scottsdale has a law. But then in Scottsdale, there's a certain department doing it, and in Mesa or Tempe some other, and in Phoenix something else. Do you think that's an issue, or it doesn't matter which part of the policy making of the town actually, takes up entrepreneurship the most and allocates budget and so on? Are there differences?
So I'll just answer that and then Sue, please go ahead. So I think for India, what they have done, the government is very gung-ho on entrepreneurship. So rather than leaving it to individual ministries, it has started creating the entrepreneurship cell, which actually looks at the mandates of the various ministries within the state and tries to draft out a common agenda and a policy. Would like to add to that.
Yeah, I mean, I'm getting from the other perspective, right? When I'm an individual, if I want to do something, I'm not looking at someone to help me, either it is government or other individual, right? I wanted to create something as a business. That's why I'm an entrepreneur. But there are policies which are coming in, which is varying from state to state, country to country. However, they play an initial instrumental role in creating the possibilities. But beyond a point, these are all entrepreneurial is more a centric of the individual who is creating something. So that's how I look at it.
Sorry, there's no good answer. Ecosystem development is messy. It is.
I mean, I go back to looking at, so in New York in 2005 and 6, so there was a place called Dumbo in Brooklyn, which was an incubator. And then, Fred Wilson, big guy in startups, he created something else. And then there are so many of these coming up, which in a way is good because there are many. But then it's like also they're all doing it differently, okay? And there aren't any standards. I'm not a big fan of ISO 9000. In fact, I detest ISO 9000, right? But on the other hand, it just looks like happening in a way that's duplicative and inefficient. And maybe, like you said, there is no
ecosystems are messy. I'm thinking at your universities, it may start in the engineering college at Georgia Tech. It may move to the business college. In many cases, move down to the provost's office, move down to the research group, et cetera. My take on it is much like, the quality movement. It's really a horizontal, not a vertical. Not Department of Energy. It's not Department of A, Department of B. And maybe over time, people start talking some common language. We're not there yet.
Yeah, not really.
But is that really what you wanted to know? Is that what?
No, I just wanted to know, like, if
we were going the org chart, where would we?
like my angle is investments, okay? So VCs and angel investments, and from that, it makes it easier for me to know, hey, if I have a certain issue, just go to this place, and that covers the entire geography.
Sure. So in a sense of speaking, I think iStart, which is the government's department for working with startups, sort of, well, at least in India, to a certain extent, that is the binding factor which works with different departments, which comes under the IT department.
One commonplace we're seeing it in most states is under economic development. They see this as job creation kind of possibility, but there is no standard.
Right, not yet.
I'd like to recommend a book. It's called The Startup Community Way by Brad Felding and Hathaway. And it's about how startup ecosystems are complex adaptive systems, that there's no leader, there's little organization, and that they're almost most organic, and that they can't work any other way. You can't control them. You try to control them, they don't thrive. And it's not perfect. I met the author not too long ago.
Which one, Brad?
Ian.
Okay.
He lives near me, but there are some nuggets in there that are really valuable. It helps to have overlap, especially because I argue that most of what we talk about at conferences like this, we still don't know what the right answer is. I defy you to give me a definition of entrepreneur that everybody accepts.
But I'm okay with that. I think that's ecosystem development, and so long as you do something. Brad started an organization, and when I tell you what it is, he put his money where his mouth is, called TechStarts. One of the best places to create entrepreneurs through accelerator programs, etc. Do something. I think the waiting, because you're waiting for the government, you're waiting for the vice chancellor, you're waiting is probably the worst decision we all make, because that's called inertia, right? So do something and then pivot as needed.
All right, so I want to be mindful of time because that was my job. I'm doing.
Oh, I thought they're bringing lunch in this time. You'll be lunch together. All friends.
But good information so far, good discussion so far. We'll continue the third segment. Part of it is, to understand this better, we went on sort of a journey of trying to collect data and said, why don't we understand the intent and attitudes of the customers? There's a new word for that I've learned from the other sessions that we're working with. And, we started this journey, Chinu mentioned TiE Jupiter, which is an active, we get bored on these committees, so we think of new ways of how can we do things better. So TiE Jupiter, which is, this big Jupiter planet, what can we do to now be a data-driven institution, right? So we're trying to apply best practices and iterate ourselves. So almost a year ago, we said, okay, there's a small 1.5, Jupiter 1.5, because we have versions of our thoughts and ideas. We said, okay, let's identify. So we went around and we found, we all agreed that we need to capture some data from the students that took part with the Pitchfest initiative between 2020 to 2022. And we said, let's go out, did some research, found a good instrument that was validated by Francisco Linen. Some of you know Dr. Chen, Entrepreneurial Intentions Questionnaire. It's a lengthy questionnaire. We got the author's permission to modify it, reduce it, and then just send it out to the students that had taken part. And to take that further, we invited Dr. Black to help us analyze it. Now, Dr. Black, a decision science faculty at University of Houston Clear Lake, has #1 selling textbooks on business statistics for multiple years now. So is a noted author in the space and a lot of other achievements. So I'm going to invite Dr. Black to help us. Just go ahead and tell us the analysis of that survey. And
on the right?
The one on the right.
It's interesting. I've been teaching statistics for years and years and years. I've been there 44 years. I'm trying for the record. I'm not really cheering for the others to die, but I am watching a couple of them disappear.
That started when he was age 12.
Okay, speaking of, will tell you this, but tomorrow I have to leave this afternoon and get back to Houston because tomorrow's our wedding anniversary. We've been married 55 years. So, I think I knew we were married when we were 12. That's we also have some friends that kind of exaggerate things, and they say that my book is the #1 economics book in the world, which is, I think I've had one economics course. But just quickly, we don't have an entrepreneurial program at UH Clear Lake. We're a university of 9,000 students. About over 2,000 are business majors. I'm in the College of Business. We have a graduate program. In the graduate program, I teach now business analytics, which is fun and interesting. But I've never taught entrepreneurship or anything like that. So it's kind of new for me, but kind of isn't new for me. I like standing up and talking, by the way. Sorry. I have a daughter, so I maybe mentioned this at a previous meeting that decided she wanted to go to New York to go to college. So she went to Parsons School of Design, got her bachelor's degree there, worked with some rather high fashion organizations, and was very active and started her own line. She's had articles in magazines. She was on Project Runway not too long ago, which was an interesting thing by itself. But anyway, she has her own company, and we struggled with it for about 10 years. And one of the things that happened when we first got going, there were two people in the fashion industry. One's a lawyer that sues a lot of companies and protects copyrights and things. And the other one was a very highly successful shirt designer with Polo. Anyway, they mentored us a lot, spent a lot of time with us. But we spent hours wrestling with price points and margins, and then we find out we make really good stuff, and so we don't make any profit because we end up selling for what they cost us. And financing's been an issue, scheduling's an issue. So anyway, there are people outside the STEM organization, like fashion designers and others in other areas, that are interested in doing this. So anyway, now to get back to the basics, if I can make this work. Did I go the wrong way?
Just keep going.
All right. There were 154 student participants in this over a period of a couple of years or more, who got to a high level in pitching their ideas. And talk about inclusivity and diversity. You can see here we have a representation from different age groups, genders. The age group that's interesting is some over 65s that were in this competition. That's interesting. When we collapse their majors down, you can see that really almost 70% were what we would call the STEM area. But we had some business students. The rest of them were just sprinkled out, so we put them together. And look at the education levels that we have, all different education levels. So what I believe Paul was talking about earlier, and I believe it was under the guise of under the umbrella of mentoring, that all different groups get mentoring. And you can see here the different types of students that were involved in this study. So we move on.
Same slide. We told you to sit up.
Oh, okay, that's okay. No, actually, I would have been out there if this were a class. I'd be about the third row. But anyway, one of the things that Robbie got that he used off the original instrument was entrepreneurial intent, which is a construct which we won't get into. But when I first went to graduate school, I said, "What's a construct? Tell me what it is." It's love, hate, and it's self-worth, and all those kinds of things. Happiness, and these things statisticians typically don't like to analyze because they're kind of messy and they're subjective. And I always tell my classes, but they're actually often the most important thing. So the intent of the student, while it was difficult to measure, we have some sub-constructs here that represented a bunch of questions.
And quick question.
Yeah.
What is the specific articulation of intent here?
Robbie.
Yeah, entrepreneurship intent.
And so it's built up by attitudes, behavior, self-efficacy behavior, and those others. So anyway, they're put together and you get an intent score. And then we went and we analyzed it by demographics. So because the intent score was continuous, I don't want to overwhelm simple stat, but we used t-tests and one way to know for those of you that are familiar with that. When we got through, there were 8 pages that we have, 8 really neat pages that I put together with tables explaining all this. Yeah, well, there they are. I didn't think you'd want to see 8 pages, especially at noontime. So there's one page. When I saw this, I was kind of disappointed because those of us that like to publish and have to publish and need to publish and want to publish, we're looking for statistical significance. We want a lot of statistical significance. And when we got to this, it's like, well, basically nearly nothing matters, you know. And then I thought, wait, that's great. This is inclusivity. This is diversity, inclusiveness. Your intent score was not significantly different between men and women, between the majors, between level of education from high to low, and in the various age groups. It just didn't matter. And so the people that were making it this far in the competition that were from all these different areas, there was no significant difference in their tent scores by these characteristics, except for East versus West, and the difference wasn't too much. And as I understand, the way East versus West was defined as a line down the Atlantic Ocean. So anyway.
Eastern Hemisphere, Western.
Yeah. And so here are their scores. Now, just if I have a minute to just dwell on this, the average score was 22.2, okay? But the scores varied from 2 to 28. And actually, probably most of them started at about 15 or 16. So when I teach this stuff, I would say, well, we wrestle with what does significance means. It means something really big, wow, powerful. Well, in statistics, it just means you rejected the null hypothesis, which was there's a zero difference. So we can say with some confidence, there is a difference between the two hemispheres, but I always teach and preach in my class, in my book, that well, from a business point of view, is it substantive, which means is it business important? So even for entrepreneurs who go and they get somebody to analyze data for them, or even big companies, and they'll tell them you have a significant difference. You go, wow, what is that? So I always tell my students, put your business hat on and ask yourself, is that really important? Yeah, it's a couple of points difference between East and West, but it's not like going from 16 to 27. So something to think about. That's that, right? So moving on, some other questions were asked. One of the questions was, have you had entrepreneurial education anywhere? I guess it would be any kind of education or probably formal coursework. And guess what we have? No difference between men and women on this particular one, and by major. And actually, I think I wanted to go to the next one. Let's go back. Okay, so the only two areas where, in order to analyze East versus West on have you had an entrepreneurial education or not, that's a yes/no question. So I ran a bunch of chi-squares. The null hypothesis is they're independent. Whether you've had education is independent of your gender or your age and so on. The two places where it did matter was East versus West in terms of what percentage of them had entrepreneurial education. And my figures, I ought to get them right. It's 50% of people from the East, and I think it's 70% of the people from the West. And people from the West were like 20% of the group. Let me just get that right. Yeah. 73% of people from the Western Hemisphere had some entrepreneurial education, and about 50% of the East. Which, because I don't have an entrepreneurial background, I want to let you reach conclusions. But I'm thinking, what if 50% of the people from the East haven't had entrepreneurial education? How did they make it this far? That's an interesting question. What else has happened? Maybe mentoring and other things that I've heard at the conference here. And then according to the age group, there was a significant difference, but it was like, listen to this. The people 18 to 24, 48% of them had entrepreneurial education, but on the 25 to 34, 71%. Well, I guess as you get older, maybe you have a better chance to have entrepreneurial education. Anyway.
More self-efficacy.
Yeah, so I'm trying to move on, talk too fast. I'm a little bit nervous because I want to get you out of here in time. He's going to pull me by the tie in a minute and have me sit down. So then I thought, we've got entrepreneurial education. Have you had it or haven't you not had it? Let's see if there's a difference in their intent scores. And you can see there's a significant difference, but again, it's a difference of 2. Or you guys can see that. I can't see it. I have to look here. So, if you had entrepreneurial education, you scored higher in this intent construct. If you hadn't, though, there was still 21.22. So there's something going on in this competition with people. Again, it's probably the mentorship to figure out what's the cause of, if there is, or what's related to it is not really my area, but something to think about. All right, so then there's a couple of more questions we asked. We're kind of getting near the end of this in case you're getting fidgety. One What about if the parents have part or full-time ownership, like parents own stuff? So the kids will go into that, will try to do that, or they won't try to do that. Like our daughters don't have PhDs because their parents do, kind of. I don't know why I was thinking about this. But anyway, overall, you can see there around 50%, 48% of these people, the students that went through this process, their parents did have some kind of part or full-time ownership, but about 52% do not. And so I analyzed this parent ownership by all of these different demographics, and basically none of them made any difference. The parent ownership wasn't different by age or education or anything. The only difference was between males and females. Now the females only made up about a quarter or a fifth of the group, which probably you would want to increase. But anyway, I didn't mean that as a negative. But 65% of the females came from families where there was parental ownership or part ownership, but less on the males. Another question that was asked, have you ever seriously considered being an entrepreneur, which is kind of embedded in all the different pieces that we're doing here. And overall, you can see that, I have the overall figure, by the way. I think I have it up there.
It was high, right?
It was high.
Yeah.
Anyway. Anyway. Yeah.
It was very high.
Oh, overall was high, yeah, 90%. Yeah. So these people were pretty serious by the time they got here. No difference by, because so many of them, the starters, had seriously considered, it was kind of hard to divide them up by those different areas. You can see down here, though, the ones that had entrepreneurial education, almost 98% of them were serious, had seriously considered. But 80% of those that didn't have entrepreneurial education had seriously considered it. So we go back to, okay, and this is a guy from outside the area. Why is that? This people, they're motivated. And then down here, okay, so then I took their intent. This kind of makes sense. The intent scores I compared for if you seriously consider being an entrepreneur or you hadn't, there was a giant gap between their intent score, which kind of makes sense. And then
1 minute.
1 minute. Okay. Got that one? All right. So I'm down to my last slide. So as I understand it, it was explained to me, the cities in India are divided up by tiers. Tier 1's the largest, tier 2 kind of mid-size, tier 3 smaller. This is a breakdown of the students that were there. A lot of them from tier 1 and tier 2, but almost 20% from tier 3. And I checked the demographics against this. No, I'm sorry, not the demographics. The questions that we had gone through, there was no significant difference. But if you go down to intent score, look there. Tier 2 has a significantly higher intent scores than the other two. And I even did a multiple comparison to keep it statistically correct. And if you look down there at the bottom, have you ever seriously considered being an entrepreneur? Almost 98% of the people from tier 2 had considered it. The other two are still pretty high, but tier 3 is the smallest at 75, and there was a significant difference using a chi-square analysis. And there you go.
Awesome. So look, this stuff is important because at the end of the day, our intent here is we're volunteering our time, and we care about practical entrepreneurship because we've lived it, right? Some of us are academics, so come from academics. All of us have owned a business, or at least had some exits or two. And all of us feel that it's important that in our local communities, that this opportunity, the American dream opportunity, is made available for everyone. The data that Dr. Black has analyzed helps us to know that, okay, it's working. The more entrepreneurship education we can give in the form of mentoring, the more intent we're building in our communities to be entrepreneurs. Data says that. We are trying to do more of this stuff to help us keep us on track. Mentor of mine says if you don't write it down, you really don't have a plan. And if you're not data driven, then you're really not doing anything. Unless it's there, it doesn't matter. So from that point of view, I think it's important. The key takeaways from all three of these activities, is right on the slide there. We thank you, and we'll take any questions around all three of those if you have any questions. Our timeline is 2:12, right, or 12:15. I think we're right on the dot at 12:15.
12:30.
So we have a little time.
12:30.
Okay, so now
Go to
we
the
have
next
some
slide,
time.
so people at least know our content.
Yeah, the question.
And here's our contact information. But go ahead. We'll have some questions.
Okay, so right early on in the presentation, there was, let me find my question. Okay. I think it was Dr. Lopez, you were talking about tracking engagement between the mentor and the mentee. At our university, our director is very focused on getting us into the consumer field. And part of tracking mentor relationships is the successes and future outcomes that come out of those relationships. Are you guys able to track that as well? Like how much funds are raised during the however long that relationship lasts, or if they're launching new products or doing anything of note?
So the one that we did in the spring was mostly to make sure that they either launch or they scale, right? The one that's the next step, we're calling it Project Neptune, because Jupiter seemed to be, is going to exactly now measure investability as the outcome. Now, it may turn out they'll actually, at the very beginning, do a self-assessment. The mentors, of which there'll be 2 per team, will actually look at the assessment and say it makes sense. They'll co-develop a development action plan that says, if you're here and you want to go here, what are the 3 or 4 things you want to do? In the prior one, it was more sort of very action-oriented, more sort of what are you going to do by the next time? This one is sort of over a 4-month period. The measurement is how investable are you, right? And then there'll be a periodic monthly assessment tool that they will again take between the mentors and the mentees. And then our intent is left to, we're doing it in 6 cities across the world, 3 in the US, 3 in India. And our intent then is to say if investability is the measure, again, what's their self-measurement against that? And then in selected cities where angel groups exist within the chapter, we will do what we're calling an investor demo day, and then see, in fact, would we write checks to these stuff. So I'd say sort of, but the second part is a pilot, the one we've done. We are learning a lot. Now we're actually applying it not just to student teams. We're applying it yesterday. We kicked off women-led teams, minority-led teams. All of this seems to have some application. And we're glad to help you with, so long as you say, TiE Global gave me a great idea in your Princeton Review article.
I'd like to add that TiE Rajasthan came up with a document called TiE Navigate, which is literally the navigation between the mentor and the mentee. It's a 12-month period pilot that we started, and there is quarterly assessment of what's happening as a result of this relationship. It is being documented, and Gordon Grant from TiE Atlanta has created a dashboard. He's digitized this entire document, this concept that we had in mind. So this is also something which is capturing the outcomes of the mentor-mentee relationship, where there's an anchor mentor. And again, inclusivity is just not about the startups, but if there is a mentor behind who's part of the ecosystem, then inclusivity is also of the mentor. So there's an anchor mentor who brings in relevant domain experts as and when required. And then that's how this relationship progresses.
We're glad to share the tools and our learnings. They may not be perfect, but that's why we're calling it the next step as a pilot. They're all built on G Suite stuff through, Google Sheets, Google Forms. And so I'm glad to help you.
Yes, 2 questions. One, so in Georgia and in Atlanta, if you work closely with the Atlanta University Center, where I work. And the second question about the margin, you said ideas are marginalized, not people. But it seems to me like there's a lot of evidence that an idea may not be taken seriously if it doesn't come from the right person.
Yes.
Like an idea from a woman is not taken as seriously often. An idea from a minority is not taken. So it seems to me like the person does influence whether the idea is taken seriously, or did I miss something I could have essentially trust me?
So let Paul answer the first part.
Or I was going to say, ladies first, you take the second. Welcome back.
So, this is very interesting. So whenever we talk about picking up the starter for funding, we go to the top universities. So I'm not being politically correct here. There is a certain definition of the top universities. In India, we're talking about some engineering colleges which are considered to be the top universities. But if you look at the data, which has been statistically analyzed by Professor Black, you'll find that a lot of intent, etc. There's a significant difference between tier 2 cities as compared to tier 1 cities. And a lot of students from tier 2 cities and the colleges in tier 2 cities, which may not be the top universities, top colleges, they are really getting a lot of traction now in terms of success, not in terms of investability. So we have to get out of the stereotypical mindset and evaluate a project for what it is worth, rather than marginalizing certain kind of people and therefore kind of ideas which are coming from certain kind of cities to be able to be more inclusive.
So you're more saying that that's your goal,
That is one.
It shouldn't depend on the person, which by the way, of course, I agree, 100%. I've just often seen that when investors come, it just doesn't always work the way we want it to.
But
we can
data
do
now,
better.
data now is proving that this is actually, this is not true, because a lot of these unicorns are actually coming up from cities or from colleges, which are stereotypically not, top.
There are a lot of diversification, right? So it's more a journey, and as a TiE, we are looking at how we can support in every part of the journey whenever there is a need. Right? Something like that should be looked at, right? Basically, the mentoring, the deep mentoring, where we are talking about, we have enough examples that we can share. The tier 2, the intentions are very clearly driven. 2019 before COVID. So the transformation of their, looking at the idea to business, plan, and then getting into the next level is enormously visible from no matter where they are from. And then typically one example from TiE Hyderabad is that you remember the team, they couldn't even present in English in the beginning. When one mentor took them 1 week of given some kind of a possible mentoring, they stood first in the local competition. They traveled all the way here. And then they were able to understand they couldn't win in the global competition. But today, that particular university, which is in the not even tier 3, they are in the tier 5 of our rural segment. And every competition, every year, those people come. The professor has every year they are getting 3 or 4 startups which are coming out of that institution. That is only because that they were able to become part of it, come all the way to US, and learn whatever is happening, and then go back. So those are the possibilities.
Similar
right?
stuff has happened to TiE Rajasthan as well.
That doesn't surprise me as much, because people that tend to be left out. So you're the not the best schools, or you're a little bit more outcast, tend to be entrepreneurial because this is their only way out. Because often you get sort of cut out of it goes back to the middleman theory. The more likely you are to be, outcast, the more likely you are to be entrepreneurial, because you're cut out of other career options per se.
Yeah.
And so entrepreneurship becomes. So that doesn't surprise me as much as the tier 2 being more entrepreneurial than tier 1. So the tier 1 people are more likely to be able to be the long doctor. No offense, but there's as somebody said the other day, the marriage market.
Yeah. But that's very well said. Creating the possibilities in the journey is the major inclusivity we are all talking about.
Long ways to go about potential, but we got to start with intentionality. We have been working with the HBCUs in and around Atlanta, notably with Morehouse, Clark, Spelman, etc. But it's not enough. So guess what? We're going to work together. You're going to become part of a program we've now run for 7 years called Innovate Georgia, which allows you to not just work on your own, but work with 250 professors and innovation center directors around the state of Georgia, so that you're not inventing the wheel and vice versa, because we think it's an important piece to involve. I love the fact that we're very rich in the historically Black colleges and universities in the Southeast, and we just need to do more. So come be part of a program we call Innovate Georgia. And in fact, we're going to run our fall conference in Macon rather than in Atlanta, et cetera. So Come on, you can drive 2 hours. After all, they can't always stop to Atlanta, so I'll fill you in right after. We'd love to work more with you.
Okay. So any other questions? And yes, sir.
Yeah, I teach entrepreneurship to about 500 students a year in 2 semesters, about 250 students per semester. I've been teaching for maybe about 7-8 years. Even I find myself out of depth when it comes to mentoring. But the way you are presenting data, it seems that you have a highly trained or highly expert mentors in your team. How is that possible? Is there any kind of
So it takes work, right? Once we realize that our differentiation is mentoring as an organization, our students have told us that for 10 years now. So what we've done is in our particular chapter, every chapter does it differently. One of our board members is the mentor of mentors. Just like, Tiger Woods needs a coach as well, kind of deal. And he ensures that there's a good connection between the mentee team and the mentor. Tomorrow, now I would say we have not done enough on helping the mentors. While it's well viewed by the mentee in general, I think in sports, who coaches the coaches? We don't hear about that, by the way. So tomorrow we're running our first ever mentor workshop. That's being run out of a member of TiE in Pune, India, of all places. And then we're going to show the many, many online tools we have that have been developed out of Atlanta. So we're on a journey. Come join us. Let us help
even
you.
Even before that, right? So TiE has a wonderful platform which is for fostering entrepreneurship, right? It's a membership-driven organization. We are all paying ourselves to volunteer, right? So we pay and volunteer. So that is the first criteria. The second criteria is the continuity of bringing all the different ideas across the globe, the 58, 62 different chapters, and trying to learn from ourselves, coach each other, create the possibilities, create ecosystems. And to say, we start mentoring right from the 9th grade students, which is a program called TiE, the Young Entrepreneurs. 9th grade to 12th grade, we teach them entrepreneurship, given the possibilities of becoming entrepreneurs. Then TiE University comes in, talks about undergraduate and postgraduate students, and then multiple other programs like Jupiter, Neptune, all the ecosystem, what we talk about, solar system, everything else is possibly there, not to just give the money for the startup founders, but also create the possibilities of being an entrepreneur. Right? Something like that is, so that's why we are here to do that. That's why it is going to be.
Yeah,
we do the
second
same.
question.
What college or universities are you connected to? Oh, you're in IIT Kharagpur.
I have a question to Paul directly.
Yeah. Then we'll ask TK, who's had
See, when my students ask me, is it a good idea to start a startup immediately after graduation, or some experience will always help? I tend to believe that some experience always helps. Having that background, my question is, why do you target only students and not experienced people?
Well, actually, we don't. Our membership in Atlanta, it was actually a little wrong. Our membership starts at age 11. We started a middle school program. There is a high school program run in 30 cities. Our oldest member is a professor at Emory University, 84, a Mabushan winner, by the way. So we don't only do it. Today, we decided because of this symposium, we would just talk about TiE. But we have many other programs.
I'd like to pitch it.
Oh, sure.
Thanks.
And all the other chapters pick the kind of focuses. So we call it any stage and any age.
So, just before, TiE Hyderabad chapter member is part of
we're passionate about what we do.
No. TiE Kharagpur has our chapter members as their entrepreneurship cell drivers. It's inclusive. That's what it is.
So just to add to the passion, I've been paying $1,500 for 20 years as a TiE member. So I'm paying to be a member.
Yeah.
And then what was said is that we all pay and we're in there and we help each other. To answer your question, you are challenged to find mentors. We have guys who've been working in industry for 20 years, Exxon guys and, Unilever or whatever. They're in there and they want to maybe give something back. And that's how you manage.
We're just trying to get the scales way. We've always been way privileged, and we'd like to, leaving a legacy to your students or the people who have scaled up, maybe in their 30s, 40s, 50s. I'll leave it to the
Yeah, you
moderator.
asked it, Paul, but I just conclude to become an entrepreneur. We are all entrepreneurs sitting here. There is no time, there is no stage, there is nothing required. It is all the intention of that particular person to be an entrepreneur just starting. That's it.
With your permission, one half minute, please.
Okay.
Always, ladies and ladies.
Just that
I have no
sometimes
real
experience
purpose
becomes baggage. Because you see, it's the idea and the passion which is very, very important, which should come from the student, from the startup mindset. Everything else is, can come from mentoring, the unit costing, the go-to-market, and how to make the business plan, and how to, all of that can come from mentoring. But the idea is where the innovation lies. And sometimes when you go through experience, it becomes a baggage for you to see why things will actually not work out because of the experience that you have. And to the second point, they're all right, but I had to chip in the last that we're working with all ages, all stages, everybody. TiE University is just one vertical of what we do.
And in fact, she told us yesterday that they're now working with the police department on
Yes,
cybercrime.
cybercrime.
So there's another way to build a community. It's all about building our communities using entrepreneurship as the ingredient. Good, ma'am.
Mine is so quick because I know everyone wants to get a lunch. Dr. Black, is your stats from this project published and are they accessible?
Yeah, and I want to ask that.
What we did here,
Yeah.
So one of the things we decided is we're gonna give you guys the pilot to, and then based on your reaction of what was important, we were gonna publish it into multiple articles.
Okay.
So it's not yet published, so you got the preview, yeah.
Please do that so that we have access to the data.
Yes.
Which is the results.
Sure.
Sure.
Thank you.
I'll send an introductory email.
What university are you?